some extent the product is kind of at a very mature point. And I don't want to say finished, but it's very very mature. Like it works very well. It's the UI is better than the Compound, for example, like Anchor's UI specifically, for example. The governor's proposal is far superior to anything, to the second best, right? We have a transparency page that honestly doesn't even exist almost anywhere else for any other project. So Dola as a stable coin is stable and it's multi-chain, it's on Phantom on Ethereum. We have partners who are generating us revenue to the DAO, right? Like Scream, Fuse, and our own Anchor. We have these kind of revenue sources that are just working. So at this point, like I feel like Inverse, the product is complete. I think my perspective is that we kind of, or at least my own personal perspective, and I hope that maybe the rest of that will somehow agree on this as well. That this is kind of the time to think outside and up and higher up the stack. Basically, trying to build thing around Dola and on top of Dola and try to make Dola grow because that's kind of the main uh, that's the main kind of source of protocol revenue, right? The more the law supply grows, the more Inverse now and Infill can as well benefit. So yeah, so that's kind of what I'm mostly focused on. It's kind of I'm kind of making all of the work that I'm doing like outside of Inverse now right now is focused on that main goal, which is generating demand for NOLA, basically.
Yeah. Like we've seen these attempts with like Station Zero X. I think like what they're doing is great.
Right.
I was personally
Yeah,
talking with
exactly.
them in I was personally talking with them in a podcast recently. And yeah, I think what they're doing is great and I love what you're doing over there. And yeah,
Mm.
I love that you've like finished up like the test, and I think that's something that Inverse should like push because because yeah, we do I think the main bottleneck right now is that we just do need another engineer, and I think there's already some promising applications, and I think we should probably amplify it to see who we can get for Solidity devs. And yeah,
Yeah, I actually got a couple. I got like four so far. Four submissions so far. Uh, Three or four, I don't remember. And uh, so something interesting happened. I saw. So I went through the code, and initially I thought they all had kind of passed the kind of the task or the test. Um, I went through it again, and I found out basically there is one mistake that all of them kind of did not notice, except for one who did kind of notice it. And it's mostly about kind of understanding kind of the context of how this all works. So they kind of missed something. So yeah, I was kind of concerned because it seemed like people were solving this too quickly. I thought maybe the task was too easy, but clearly it wasn't that easy. So we'll see. We'll see. It's still getting there are people who are still working. Then there are people who shared the repos, the GitHub repos, and they still haven't started. So we'll see how they do. I also for the ones that did do the mistake, basically, they kind of mentioned the problem. We'll see how they solve it as well. So yeah, it's actually I think it's a lot like it's as I said, I was concerned it was going to be too easy, so it wouldn't be very useful to assess them. But it seems like we at least have one person who proved to be a better candidate so far than others. We'll see how the rest do.
yeah, it's really looking forward to see what comes out of it. I think once we get another engineer, we could probably take a lot of stress off from their shoulders as well. Because I know that you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot with Station Zero X. You're doing a lot with like other protocols. I know you're trying to make a whole Phantom AMM machine right now that uses Dola, which sounds really exciting. But yeah, and
Yeah, I'm actually so right, yeah. So there is the AMM project. So the AMM project is gonna have Dola in every single pair, and there's a reason for that, and there's kind of like an added value there. And yeah, so like the AMM project is actually still in a very early stage. So the problem is it's not only the AMM project. There is actually a couple other projects that I kind of was planning to launch on Phantom, and I kind of came up to this. Uh, I had a problem where these projects are. And I've actually had other ideas, and like many months ago that I kind of discarded because they were too experimental. So I came up with this solution, which I tweeted about yesterday, which is called DeFi Olympiads. Um, this is basically gonna be like a test environment in on Phantom. So it's not a test net; it's an actual. It's like an incentivized testing environment. However, people are not going to be using real money in it. And within this testing environment, I'm going to be launching like basically initial like pre-launch versions of these protocols, so that they're tested before they're tested on kind of prod, but they're not really in prod yet, because people can't really lose money on them. However, it's incentivized because people who use these protocols will be able to claim kind of um, airdrops of like, the actual product tokens later if they are able to use these protocols well. So there's going to be like a competition, where people receive an equal amount of like dummy tokens, and they should be able to get to use these tokens to get the maximum amount of another token. They're all like they're not transferable tokens, so you can't really trade them aside in a specific way. And the idea is to test to validate the kind of the stuff that for example, the new bond design that I posted about, the way the idea is to test it there, and that's one thing. And if people are able to use it well, so they're incentivized because there is a potential airdrop from getting the kind of from kind of competing in that environment. And yeah, so it's gonna be that first. It's gonna be like this kind of DeFi Olympiads kind of competition where I'm going to be kind of testing different kind of iterations of the same kind of designs, find out what works best. And also, people are going to be in this kind of environment. They're going to be allowed uh, to exploit these protocols, even using code, right? Code exploits. So, like, there's a vulnerability. People are going to be allowed to use it to basically you're allowed to do anything to go from your ticket token to the prize token to the maximum amount of prize tokens, even if that means exploiting the code, right? So these are going to be the two tokens, really. Every participant is going to be who's going to have an equal amount of ticket token, and the airdrop in the future is going to be distributed proportionally to whoever has the prize token, not the ticket token. So you can use the protocols, you can exploit the protocols, do whatever to get the highest number of prize tokens. And yeah, so yeah, that's kind of the way I'm doing it. So that's kind of an alternative, really, kind of to. Well, the problem is like if one would resort to audits for these protocols, even if audits would reduce the risk, then there's a problem of economic attacks, and not even only attacks, but like inefficiency, or just like when you look at Solidly, for example, there was a problem with the emission rate. So that's the kind of, although it was audited, so that's the kind of thing you can't really catch with audits, or auditors are not gonna like look at the behavior of the emission rate, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I'm taking that. Also, it should be fun, right? It should be like a fun competition. People are not going to be required to have any amount of capital to participate, or they're not going to be required to pay anything. That's the
Yeah, and
vision.
I think this really harkens back to, like, the original IMV airdrop, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But alternatively, people are going to have to play the game and win,
Yeah.
or win as much as possible before they're actually airdrop.
Yeah, equal opportunity. I love to hear that. That's, like, these are the kind of things that
But
attract me.
also, it's a good environment. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
also a good environment for people to be incentivized to actually attack the protocol, whether economically or not. And if they do kind of exploit it, then they're kind of bound in the amount of damage that they can make, right? Which will be within that reward pool or the airdrop pool. So they wouldn't be stealing any
Yeah.
actual deposits, for example.
Sounds like a very interesting concept. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this done before.
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see how it'll play out. Um, I'm trying this first, and then maybe if it really goes well, then the kind of the DeFi Olympiads project will maybe turn into a platform for other developers. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Great. No, that sounds really cool. And yeah, so thank you for your wise words of wisdom, Nor. We always love having you here.
Yeah,
And yeah. So I think what Nora was talking about with, Dola sort of like just expanding around Dola is like really a really solid idea because yes, Inverse as like a product, the base product is almost finished. Um, and I think one thing that we have been shifting towards is bringing more utility towards INV. Right? I know Dola is working stably, but INV is still is still being worked on. We're still trying to figure out the milestones, especially with the recent addition of INV Plus. And I know that Nakamomo was working on like these milestone rewards for INV Plus. I don't know if you want if I don't know if you had something any progress on that, Nakamomo.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. We're knocking away at that proposal, me and Harry, Crypto Harry, that is. So right now we're thinking that we're would mint NFTs as that would record your how much X and INV you were holding, meaning staked in for a period of time, and this time would be between each milestone. So let's say that you get in on the milestone and you stake your inverse, you hold it for until you reach the next milestone, and that NFT is going to show you that, and that's going to give you benefits versus people who get NFTs at higher milestones much later. So I think that's a really interesting thing. It could possibly create a secondary market for these once the revenue sharing rewards go live and you can claim DOLA using these NFTs. You will be able to claim different amounts depending on how much was staked in the NFT and from which milestone it originated. So that's a pretty like it keeps it fairly simple, but it still makes a difference when you're there, what you do, how much you stake, and when and how long.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so that proposal is still being worked on, but we are looking to, add basically, really push that message of positive sum DeFi. And so the milestone rewards are part of that initiative. Great. Now,
Absolutely, yeah.
mhm.
So, and also, Nor, if you, I mean, you got your hands in. Well, I don't know where your hands are, but you seem to be active all over Phantom, and there are a lot of NFT things going on there. Love to hear if you have any ideas for if we could use this, well, expand the use case for these things. But it's still a proposal, so open for all suggestions from all directions, or a draft
Yeah,
proposal, I
I'm
should
not
say.
yet familiar with the proposal. I'll take a look at it first, and
Cool, cool.
then kind of like I get feedback there. Yeah.
Great.
Right, that
Um,
would.
Hey, Nakamomo and Karen, you guys are putting together a community working group proposal. Why don't you tell everybody about that for a minute?
Sure, yeah. That's it's been on the forum for a few days now. It's available there to check. We're looking for input, and we've gotten quite a few responses. 10 people have, or wait a minute. That was a few days since I checked, but we have a survey out, and we really recommend that you fill it out so we know what's important to you. Like if you're here, we really would like to hear what you have to say. So there are some basically the points in the proposal are basically made into simple questions to show what people would value more or prioritize and so on. Yeah, Karen, do you have any
well, the main thing
indications?
recently that I've been thinking about is that um as the growth working group, we're sort of just like have taken multiple hands on. And so while I think it's good to have like these frameworks for like a community working group, I'm also thinking about, well, like if I have to wear multiple hats and then if I have to like do all of these things, then it would probably be best to have someone specifically work on community. And I don't think we're at that stage yet, but maybe if there's someone in the audience, who likes to do community work, like host events, um, post Twitter spaces, set up meetings, things like that of that nature, feel free to join in and be a part of that conversation. But that's sort of the internal struggle that I'm working with right now in terms of the proposal.
Yeah, there's definitely things the growth working group is doing or paying for that really ought to be done, I guess, on a more isolated basis where we can kind of look at it separately. It can be held accountable separately. We can measure it separately. Like how many Discord members have we added in the last month, or how many new people have interacted on the forum, for example, stuff like that. I think there's a lot more what we should do. And, we can keep doing it the way we're doing it. It's no problem. But I think we could be a lot more efficient and really grow this moat around the community better if we could find a way to at least try doing this as a standalone effort.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think the working group proposal is good. That's why I'm like asking, like if you're in the audience, if there's anyone, if you like doing community work, you like interacting with people, like making events, you like brainstorming merch ideas, things like that, whatever you can offer, feel free to reach out. We're looking for more contributors, basically.
Yeah, and I think we see that there is a flurry of activity that otherwise might not have happened without the working group being there with some budget that can actually, like, since it's the only working group at the moment with the title and a scope, it's kind of acted in lieu of, so to speak, and helped out in areas where another title for a group might have been better, like for moderators, for
yeah, it's a
example.
good point. So the growth working group has been sort of paying for a lot of other contributors outside of growth. And so our budget's going to run out probably after this month. So we're going to need to re-up the growth working group proposal. Probably I'll draft something next week and I'll share it with everybody, of course. But it probably is another opportunity to kind of refine things a little bit more, both in terms of, what we're measuring and spending in things like marketing or BD. By the way, I've got something to mention about BD. But then, we do have folks like Donuts who are doing a great job. He's currently inside the GWG, and in my opinion, he probably is a better, fit inside a community working group. But either way, we can go for it. I just want to mention one of the interesting things that we've gotten done in the last week is Weibo is one of our contributors. He's a protocol ambassador over to the Phantom Foundation, and he unearthed this opportunity for us to get some Phantom rewards grants, pretty significant actually, possibly up to $1 million worth of Phantom, just based on our TVL and our efforts over there and our plans over there. So we just applied, and it's kind of metered out over a 12-month period. But free Phantom could be kind of interesting. And so Weibo is doing a lot of work over there. I think Home is also. He brought that to us, and so that's a great example of what a protocol ambassador can do in terms of having their ears out there for us in ways that we're not able to. And if they bring home, if you bring home something like this for us, we're going to find a way to make it worth your while. And we've got some budget in the GWG for that now, but I think there's probably more we can do like that.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear like what we're coming up with. And the thing is, if we get the Phantom from the Phantom Foundation, it's not a little bit of Phantom. It's like a few mil, right? It's like a few million.
I think it's closer to $1 million.
Yeah, it's like $1 million's worth. That's not. And then Crypto Harry is talking about how you could use that. You could literally use that to fund the DOLA liquidity on Phantom. So I think that's something we should really push for.
Yeah, that would be great. Exactly.
Yeah.
We have like 750K liquidity for DOLA on Phantom right now, so it would do a huge impact.
Yeah, and I'm also inviting some other people to speak as well. We have 17 people up in here. That's really
Harry's
really
here. He made it. I didn't think anyone from Treasury Working Group proposal would be here, but it's really good to hear.
Okay, yeah.
He had the view from them, I think.
We have Somer up in here. We have Ito. Somer, you wanna say something? Introduce yourself. I don't think I've ever talked to you personally.
Hi everyone. It's nice to see everyone here. I've been enjoying the call. It's great. And thank you guys for doing a great job with all the different things that everyone is focused on. I had a general question, actually, something a little bit more fundamental to me that I've been trying to figure out for a little while now, relating to DOLA. The goal to grow DOLA utilization, I think, to 1 billion is really an impressive goal, and I think if it hits, it's going to be incredible. And obviously, the implications for Inverse Plus are, a big deal as well, and particularly around revenue sharing, obviously. But I was just curious, in terms of like utility for DOLA, how do I take advantage of that? Like, for example, if I said, hey, I have a bunch of ETH and I'm not doing anything with it, just sitting there accumulating value over time, but I can get utility out of that if I put it into Maker and borrow, a bunch of DAI, and then I can take that DAI and put it in Yearn or other places, and I can earn yield on that is superior to the interest that I'm paying to Maker for the loan, and so I can make money, and so that's good utility, right? So with Dollar, what are the different yield opportunities that are available, and is there a way to make those known, number one, and number two, is there a way to increase those opportunities, subject to the market, obviously, such that it makes having Dollar a more desirable proposition?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can answer that. I think because so basically, the current borrow rate for Dola on Anchor right now is 3.5 APR. It's actually even a lot lower on Fuse. It's like 0.5% or something like that. Intentionally, we're adding a lot of liquidity on Fuse. On Scream, this is just the borrowing rate. Okay, so I'm gonna get to the yield side. So on Scream, there is 6.5 APR from borrowing. However, Scream is giving 5.5% rewards to borrowers. So it's actually like 1% for borrowing Dola on Scream right now. And in all of these places, I think also including Fuse, you can use ETH and use a lot of other things. In terms of yield opportunities, Yearn has Dola is so there actually most of the yield opportunities for Dola are concentrated on Phantom. So for example, on Yearn on Phantom, Dola is still, and for many weeks, continues to be the highest yielding stablecoin on Yearn, currently at 12.5% APY. So like if you borrowed on Phantom, if you borrowed Dola on Scream, you pay 1%, and you put it on Yearn, you basically get a net of 11.5%, and you can use whatever collateral you have on Scream, right, including ETH, and Bitcoin even, or wrapped Bitcoin. So that also includes a Beefy. We're one of the highest. We're one of the highest on Beefy. Although the wired APY is higher right now, on Beefy it's 10%, so it's slightly higher on Yearn. So yeah, there's definitely like a yield arbitrage opportunity there. Even you can also do that on Ethereum. You can borrow Dola on Ethereum and bridge it to Phantom, and put it there on Yearn. So yeah, there are definitely yield opportunities in terms of utility, but there's not a lot of. I think the problem with Phantom is maybe liquidity. So there's not a lot of. There's like 700 liquidity for Dola on Phantom, on Curve at least. On Ethereum, it's closer to like it hovers between 15 to 20 million for Dola. So it's a lot higher on Ethereum. So I think part of the kind of the both inflows and the Treasury Working Group proposals purpose is to be able to have like significant Treasury holdings so that we can, as now, go to Phantom and deposit liquidity there so people can participate in these yield opportunities at larger sizes. However, right now on Yearn, there's $1.5 million deposited on Yearn. So like if you look at like right after Dola, right? On Yearn, there's Frax. Like in terms of stablecoin yield, Frax is like 350K deposited, and it's like half the APY. It's like 7%. However, when you look at NIM, right, it's 5% APY on Yearn. There's 6 million in stablecoin deposits. So I think the main reason, although the APY is less than half of Dolas on Yearn for NIM, but there's a lot more. There's like 5 times more. 4.5 times more deposits is because liquidity, right? There's not enough liquidity to solve that much Dola on Phantom. So yeah, so I think it's mostly boils down to liquidity, which is the main problem, which we are also in the process of solving. There's definitely utility more than any other stablecoin on Phantom right now for Dola.
Yeah. And that's something that we're also like talking about. Like one conversation that we were having in Growth, I think literally day before yesterday, was about the question. I think the main question that we wanted to highlight first is, why should I use Dola over other stablecoins, say Frax or MIM, for example? And I think once we pinpoint that, and then once we start to amplify that through marketing community, then we would build out that use case essentially. It's building around Dola, but it's also defining what is it about Dola that makes it better than Frax, for example? Because those are like one of
Yeah.
the competitors.
I think there I really, so I think it would be very difficult to address this problem mainly like by focusing on marketing. I think the problem is, like, we can't convince people that there's utility for Dola more than other stablecoins, while there really isn't. So right now there's yield utility basically, and that applies to like all stablecoins. There's yield for them. I think if we enter a competition of yield, all stablecoins with the largest printers will always win, and we could always do that, right? But we have kind of like a kind of a policy really, or that we don't want to do that. It's unsustainable, right? In terms of like reward and like staking rewards, right? That's kind of what almost every other stablecoin is doing, whether directly giving rewards or bribing Curve holders to allocate rewards to their holders or to liquidity providers. So yield is one utility. I think what needs to be done, and kind of really what my main focus is right now, personally, is to create actual, not only utilities for Dola, but necessities that will require users to get Dola to do whatever else they want to do. So like basically creating useful products that people want to use, and then finding out ways or finding out places in these products that require a stable coin, and then putting a stable coin, putting Dola exclusively there as the only stable coin that can be used. So in the case of Station 0x, we're kind of doing that on Anchor. Like on Anchor right now, a lot of people ask, why isn't DAI there? Why isn't any stablecoin there? Well, if you're an IMP holder, you want to borrow stablecoins. Well, that's kind of the first step, really. You have to borrow Dola. There's no other choice. So I think the goal is to create that kind of the requirement for other, like for users outside of the Embers DAO kind of environment or Anchor, where if you want to trade in-game items, you need to use Dola because it's the liquidity token that is paired with all of the in-game items or assets and items. If you want to swap between some assets that are say long tail assets, for example, that are not really very liquid. Usually these you tend to, on Ethereum, to use ETH as a pair token. On Fantasy, you tend to use FTM as a pair token. So if they use Dola as a pair token, then you're forced to use Dola to get them and trade them. And if you want to like do leverage, if you want to short, long, and high leverage, that's also something that I'm kind of working on Phantom as well. So basically, I think the problem isn't really anymore about Dola. It's really a problem of how do you create useful products, and then if for people, like products that people just genuinely want to use and that have genuine demand without like reliance on inflation. And if you can build these products, you can make them exclusively kind of tied to Dola.
Yeah,
as a stable coin.
yeah, I really like that. I really like that perspective. I think that, and this goes back to what you were saying about, in order like to create a stable coin that will be used for, like that will survive decades upon decades, they need to have like a real world use case other than just yield. So I think
Yes,
that's
exactly. You need to have network effects. Like DAI isn't just a yield stablecoin. It's a lot more than that because it's used everywhere. So you need to create that kind of effect that people. You need to basically create kind of a natural tendency to keep Dola in your wallet because you will probably you probably need to use it like every few days in some other product, and that's kind of what people do with DAI right now. They keep DAI or USDC because they know some product will need USDC. So when they choose a stablecoin to put in their portfolio, they choose one that they're probably going to use soon. So you need to create network effects, and once you have network effects, it becomes incredibly difficult for any other stablecoin competition to kind of catch up, because it's not like once you've built these products, you don't only need to compete with your stablecoin, they also need to compete with the entire kind of ecosystem of actually useful products that have their own communities and have their own utility. that people want to use, and you need to kind of migrate these kind of attract these users not to your stablecoin but to some other product that you're building, and it's just not something that most stablecoins like. It's not something that Frax is willing to do, for example. It's not something that like maybe honestly like that's something that maybe Spell has been doing using Wonderland, for example. It's just one example. But yeah, so instead of kind of the problem with Dola is that we can't really. So there is some leverage, but there isn't a lot of leverage to gain a significant advantage against other stablecoins when doing partnerships. So like if you go to like whatever product and you want to convince them to use Dola, they might agree to use Dola, but they're not gonna agree to use it exclusively, right? So if they're not using it exclusively, then Dola is not really better than any other stablecoin. I think it's mostly a network effects problem that you need to be exclusively useful rather than just as useful as other stablecoins in order to survive in this hyper competitive stablecoin environment.
Yeah, like the reason that, it's difficult to build these network effects, but once you build them up, then you create a genuine use case that no other stablecoin has. I think that's a good perspective.
I had some thoughts here. So thank you, Noor. I really appreciate that input. It helps me sort of crystallize some thinking around it as well. I think to a certain degree there's an evolution here, right? And the evolution is that the product was envisioned and built and stabilized. And there's been talk earlier in the call about the sort of completeness of the anchor system, and what it means and how all of that works. And so now we have a system that is functional and that we've sort of been proving out over since its inception and launch. And then we have the stablecoin. And I think sort of if you think about the evolution, then we're sort of at the point where now is the time for that growth, and we're positioned perfectly with all the different working groups and the focus around what's going on, the partnerships and everything else. But we have some advantages that perhaps we can lean into a bit more. And obviously there's work being done in terms of marketing and other places, but it feels like the stability of the stablecoin itself is something that could be an advantage. And if we do have good stability, it's something perhaps that we can use to our advantage to start getting the message out there that Dola is a very stable coin. Dola has resisted, significant sort of events against stability, that it has sort of come through really well. And so I think that's important. And so if people have this mindset that, hey, like out of all the stable coins, yeah, there's all these traditional ones, but then there's Dola, and Dola is also starting to build a reputation. And then the second one, maybe to Noor's point, is that although the partnerships are valuable, maybe there's also a world where we start thinking about incubating or funding or grants to get new developers and people we make partnerships with or hire or whatever to start building out protocols that are native Dola protocols that just, like leverage Dola. And maybe that's sort of a little bit forward thinking, I don't know, but it would be kind of cool. Like, if you could even,
Yeah.
go to a school and say, hey, you got like, you're doing a blockchain class or, whatever, Solidity classes, and, hey, like we'll sponsor a project, here's 100,000, and, go build a protocol that generates, some use case for exclusive to Dola.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of projects. Like I think Olympus was trying to do this as well. It's definitely something that we can consider moving forward as we grow as an organization. Once we, yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that that's all I really got to say on that. Like other guys are doing it, it's definitely a good idea to like support projects that could potentially be implemented with Dola, things like that.
Yeah, I think the problem though is that we've tried this in the past. Like since the very early days, we've had grant programs for projects that would, if you would remember, Silver, we had a $100,000 grant for projects at the very early days, like a year ago, for projects that would create demand for Dola. And we've had some applicants, but they weren't really the strongest. I think the problem is that if you're a strong kind of like founder or developer trying to kind of create something that's actually very kind of unique, it's hard. You're probably going to have a lot of opportunities for fundraising, kind of giving 100K grant maybe would not be like sufficient to them. So this is why like kind of I think the alternative that I think is actually probably better, in my opinion, in the short term, is that instead of trying to kind of fund projects like or find projects to kind of give grants to or support and help out with marketing and all that stuff, we're doing that already with partners. But I think it's actually will be a lot more productive for us to actually use all of these resources to actually build out these products ourselves. Not only because
Yeah.
not only because it's because it's hard to find these projects, but also because we're a lot better positioned to know what products would work well with Dola, what products would use Dola's advantage, Dola's kind of features as an advantage. So we're able to know, okay, well, we know Dola does X, Y, and Z. We know if we build a product, we know that these kind of capabilities, we're able to come up with products that kind of would leverage them. So it's kind of the strategy here would be, in my opinion, is to expand kind of an engineering hiring, and then kind of build out these products using our own internal resources at the start, right? So if you have like once you have this initial kind of ecosystem around Dola, then something that would happen is that then you start kind of getting more leverage when talking to partners as well. When talking to lending protocols that you want to add Dola to, that Dola fed to, for example, when you try to talk to new protocols that are about to be launched, etc. If you have an existing ecosystem around Dola, they're probably going to be adding Dola like on their own anyway. So like you're probably gotten willing to collaborate more than just that. And so when you look at Maker, for example, right? I've actually built tools for Maker now. Like about 2 years ago, I built a wallet for Dai, the Gathos wallet, and I was trying to kind of apply for a grant from Maker now, like a 25K grant, and then I had already kind of built a wallet using Dai, right? I was already a fan of Dai. I wanted to use Dai rather than any other stablecoin. And like they didn't give me the grant. They actually it was a very difficult process, honestly, at that time. But there was very little kind of stablecoin competition at that time. So like if you have these kind of people who are already kind of using your stablecoin and they're already fans of the kind of the ecosystem around it, which is what it used to be in the very early days of Dai, then you would get a lot more leverage when talking to these new protocols that are coming up, existing protocols that you want to partner with, and also you would already be
Oh,
Yeah.
you want to take it?
So you'll be much better funded, and more able to kind of fund these projects as well, because you have already an existing amount of revenue, like a higher amount of revenue than before, since Dola's supply would have grown, right? So you can give higher grants. Like when you look at Maker right now, they have like hundreds or over 100 million Dai in revenue a year.
Yeah.
Like that's that's the kind of revenue you can use to actually convince projects to like actually competitive projects to use Dola and to fund them and have them exclusively use Dola.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely love to hear the conversation. I think we could definitely talk about it more with the other community calls as well as like internal ones. We are running a little bit short of time, so I think I'm gonna move on to the analytics working group. Nufel, I know that the analytics working group I think it passed, right? And, congratulations, you have your analytics working group proposal. Do you have anything to talk about in regard to that?
Yeah, hey everyone. Actually, nice to speak to you all. I was working on a survey today. It would be nice. I would send the link in the stage chat right after. It would be nice if everyone from all kind of departments could fill it in. It would really help me to help you actually provide some nice insights and analytics.
All right, and also we have Ito, who's been doing great work in Risk. I think recently, Ito came out with like a report on, the advantages of other stablecoins and how we can position Dola. And I think it's been fantastic what Ito has been doing. So Ito, do you want to introduce yourself for a bit? I think this might be your first time. Is that right?
Yes, I actually also just recently got out of bed because I'm on the West Coast, so it's not even 9 in the morning here. But yeah, made a stablecoin report earlier in the week. I've also been doing some, I would say, early stage frameworks for risk, and I haven't shared that with the wider audience yet. But yeah, just been involved for the last 2 weeks and super excited about all the things that are happening. And of course, these calls are important too because it gets everyone excited about all the potential things that we can do and all the good things that we currently are doing. So yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
No, I'm excited too. Like every time I'm in these calls and then we hear about new updates and progress, I feel like we're really going places. Definitely love to see it. Great. I guess in that case, Masses, do you want to add anything to what you've been doing? You've been doing amazing work with the transparency page. I don't know if you guys seen it, but recently we did add, and Masses did add uh, the Fed revenue, the Fed revenue reserves, in which you can see updated monthly reports on how much revenue and profit that the Dole Fed is generating.
Yeah. So yeah, I was working on the transparency and also like on the governance side, I added some more details on the delegate stage. So now you can see like the delegation history, so like the old delegates of a delegator, the new one, and also all the delegators of a delegate and their voting powers, their ins, expect-ins, and also how the delegates voted for each proposal if the delegates voted.
Great. Yeah, I think that's great. Now, yeah, we are nearing the end of our call. I think that was a very great conversation. Thanks again, Nor. Every time we talk, I feel very bullish on Inverse. I love what you guys are doing. And yeah, so again, we just want to shout out there's definitely opportunities at Inverse if you want to contribute. We got our risk working group, we got analytics working group, we got a community working group proposal in the works. We have a growth working group. So whatever skills and talents you may have, feel free to reach out. Even if it's not in these working groups, other working groups can always be created through the power of governance. And yeah, we definitely love to see more people on board. Great. With that said, is there anything else that anyone wants to say before we end the call?
I actually do. I actually want to talk about something real quick before we end it, if that's possible.
Of course.
And so I want to talk a little bit about the policy committee and kind of the emission rate changes of IM, both on the staking side and on the bond side. So, kind of the main goal of IM Plus is to reach $1 billion in circulation using IM Plus by the end of the year. So we're definitely not on track for that at all right now. So I think something that needs to be addressed by the policy committee is how we can there's like a dilemma at the policy committee right now. There is the dilemma of minimizing price impact due to inflation rate or the kind of the emissions rate, and there is also like the kind of the rate of accelerating the treasury like holding size. The more assets are held in the treasury, the better we can improve DOLA's liquidity, attract higher trade sizes for DOLA, increase DOLA circulation, increase protocol revenue, which all ultimately goes back to holders using revenue sharing. So the question is whether short-term price matters that much, or whether like which one do we prioritize, short-term price or kind of like influence or kind of like accelerating the size of the treasury or increasing the size of the treasury more quickly. I don't really have an answer there. I think that we need to kind of like right now a lot of people are talking about the $1 billion circulation goal as if it's a given, but we're not on track right now to get there. So I think we need to kind of talk about how like across the DAO, like how we're gonna get there internally, like using InfPlus. Like to get there, that would require higher kind of both XM like APY and like more bond spending. I think basically the problem is, I think, whether we should be, what's the word? We should be more kind of aggressive to get to our goal, or we should be kind of more conservative to get to the goal at a much longer time frame. So yeah, I think basically what I would suggest basically for this policy committee, which I'm a part of, but I'm not really like leading. I think Harry is leading, or Harry is definitely leading, is uh, is to basically adjust kind of the emissions rate for M and try to kind of increase the emission rate, because I mentioned on policy committee, when policy committee did reduce the emission rate before, then it was returned back. That was due to kind of price or kind of like suggested price impact. I don't think that was necessarily the reason why M plus went down. It was just mainly like whole market sentiment. But I think when looking at price impact or kind of the impact of emissions for M plus, like for XM depositors, it should include both kind of the change in price, but also the increase in each holder's IMV amount. So if you put in 100 IMV as a deposit, and then you get 150 IMV at some point, but the IMV price went down, say 10%, right, or even 20%, you're still at a profit, right? So I think what we need to, like, if we increase the APY, then we can kind of fight the problem of like price kind of impact. If kind of the APY goes up faster, or kind of the rewards go up faster than a potential decrease in price, right? So that would also like create an incentive for people to deposit in. So it would create kind of like a cycle where people are actually more confident in future rewards. So they're less likely to sell right now because they can deposit it for a high yield, right? So all of that. So I think maybe the solution would be to actually increase the APY, right? And also in return the spending on bonds, which would also kind of benefit DOLA.
Yeah, about that. That's a lot of good stuff. And some I just want to unpack just like a little point there. In our discussions there, we didn't. We wanted to try and discern what was price impact, what was what was just general market sentiment, as you said, and we were trying to look at, or we were looking at what were stakers doing, what were bonders doing, and it turned out that people unstaked a little bit more after we lowered the APY. We studied that for a short period and then increased it again. And now we're going to evaluate the results from there. But yeah, otherwise, I agree. This, yeah. Also, a Karen had to go. So I'll be finishing up the call pretty soon. But I think we might have some more comments on this. I'm not sure. Anyone cares to unmute? Yeah, but that's.
Do you guys, does that mean that you guys agree that basically APY and bond spending, or basically total emission rate, should increase? Is that kind of sentiment here?
I can't speak for everyone. Really.
Yeah, I'm asking them. Like, is that what you guys think?
We need to speak about it in the group, and yeah, I think after this call, we will. But yeah, it would be nice if you posted there too. So the thing there is like we're facing kind of incremental steps, right? Plateau-like expansion to some extent. Like once we have enough liquidity, it will unlock a whole swathe of new opportunities of collaboration with protocols that have liquidity requirements to include us. One of the main ones being Chainlink, of course. So I do believe that it's super important that we get liquidity fast, but we also, yeah, there are a lot of things to balance, like how much DOLA we can. No, never mind. That's kind of another topic. But yeah, we need to evaluate that further. I want to look into numbers as well and get some help from Harry. Like you said, he's been very good with getting some clarity around things there in the group.
Right. I think it just needs to be. I think there's still like kind of a lack of what is the word? Not confidence. There's another word. basically a lack of belief that if we are able to kind of not within kind of the DAO, not necessarily within like the policy committee, but generally, like I think there's a lack of increasing the treasury, or maybe understanding of the fact how much increasing the treasury actually benefits Inverse DAO rather than say Olympus, as a comparison. Like increasing our treasury size directly leads to higher and permanent recurring revenue to the DAO, right? Like holding DOLA liquidity and DOLA, even just pure DOLA in the treasury, actually generates money to us. That's unlike like Olympus holding say DAI, and that's because we are the issuer of DOLA. So that means holding DOLA creates demand, which needs to be DOLAs that we hold should be like are borrowed by somebody, and that somebody is paying us interest. So yeah, I think like sure, like price impact, even price impact on the short term, like I think is not, in my opinion, in my own personal view, and of course that's not necessarily the entire DAOs, but is not as important as kind of the recurring revenue for the DAO that we would generate by increasing the treasury, because we can use that to basically, if we want to create like recurring buybacks, for example, for the DAO. We can basically we have this asset that is productive in our treasury. It's like buying a property that we would be renting forever to other people for revenue. So like this is an extremely important and productive product to or buy, which I think should be put in that perspective. If we have $1 billion in circulation and we have an average of 10% APY for borrowers, then we're earning $100 million about a year in revenue, which we can use in buybacks, for example, right? That's why the $1 billion target is extremely valuable and extremely important. I think IM holders don't completely or fully grasp the value in that and what purpose of these bonds completely. And not only IM holders, but also like maybe some people within the DAO as well.
Yeah, all that needs to be elucidated. We're working on getting simple messaging of the narrative of value creation around DOLA. So
yeah, but also conviction. That's the word I was looking for, actually. Like we need conviction as well. Like some people actually hear that and understand that, but they don't actually believe necessarily that this is actually like a lot of people think. A lot of people are thinking about the short term a little too much, in my opinion. I actually don't really care about if price on the next couple like months. I don't think it really matters if we're able to execute this successfully, because then we can, as I said, we're going to survive forever if we have these assets in our treasury, because they're going to create recurring revenue forever, right? So this is completely different from honestly any other project because of the fact that these are these are revenue generating assets that we're buying in our treasury. Yeah, so as in addition to that, in addition to the direct revenue that it's creating, it also is creating higher liquidity, which allows bigger players to get into DOLA, creating an additional amount of revenue, right? So it's not like a linear relationship of how much like if we have like say $100 million in our treasury, then we have like a 10 billion, which is 10% of that as revenue. No, it's higher because then more people can get into DOLA and then create more revenue for us.
indeed.
So and I think it's a problem of conviction, in my opinion. People need to be really fully convinced of that kind of goal and how much value it can create to us.
I think one of the issues was that there's a lot of like new IMB holders coming in, and then they look at the price and they're very distraught. I think we could definitely push out this messaging of like why we want to increase DOLA circulation to 1 billion. Like, what is the use case for this? I think that's definitely a message that we can start pushing out.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe like a Medium article, like
Yeah,
talking about this goal, like specifically the $1 billion. I like kind of talking about a hypothetical scenario of what happens then. Like, what can we do? Like the things I was talking about, like if we have a 10% AP, and we've had up to 50% like APR for borrowers on Anchor at some points, right? At durations of like high demand. So we have that amount of supply that's generating us revenue, how much we would be making. But then also if the liquidity increases by that much, and we also locking it forever, creating like permanent confidence into liquidity, unlike any other stable coin, right? then people can know that there's going to be this amount of liquidity or higher of DOLA 10, 20, 40, 50 years from now, right? Because we own it, right? So all of these kind of points about like creating market confidence, increasing permanent liquidity, creating recurring revenue that can be used basically to create recurring buybacks forever. The more we buy liquidity and DOLA using bonds, the fact that DOLAs that are inside of liquidity pools are almost like are also generating the revenue to us. If somebody creates a DOLA ETH pair, for example, or a DOLA like say whatever like other token pair, or maybe also like the DOLAs and the DOLA 3 pool pair are all generating revenue to us, right? This information is not very known. The fact that even like tokens within LP tokens are creating kind of revenue to us because they are borrowed by somebody who is paying us revenue. I think most people, not even only in Inverse, but even outside of Inverse, don't really understand the way decentralized stablecoins work, and like debt-backed stablecoins, like including DAI, NIM, and DOLA. If they understand that, honestly, like stablecoins are the most profitable product that can be built in DeFi so far, because everybody who's holding a stablecoin is generating revenue to the issuer. I think there will be a lot more conviction in the mission that we're trying to do here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that's a good place to end the call. Thank you so much, Noor, for your like insight. I think we definitely like after you've talked, I think there's definitely a lot of opportunities we can do in regards to like messaging for this, because these are things that we sort of subconsciously knew, but we didn't really like pin it down either. So I think that's a good area to end with. All right. It's a great call. I don't want to cut anyone off, but it's 12:15. I think it's time that we end the call. All right. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Noor, for participating. It's always nice to have you here, and it's nice to see you like active again. Definitely appreciate what you're doing here.
Yeah, thanks a bunch, Noor, and everyone who came up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you all, guys.
Thank you. All right, great. Call is over, guys. We'll see you guys next week. Bye, everyone.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.